We've been here so long. So afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming through. We appreciate your presence. And it's heartwarming that on our first event, we see such a filled house. Mahesh, I don't think I need to introduce you. Lee's done it. The video's done it. I think we've had quite a bit of a chat outside the whole morning. What we'll be chatting to today is, the power of future platforms. I do know that each and every one of us in this room, at some point, either as an advisor or client, you've interacted with a platform, or what we call predominantly LISP. And I must say that I'm not old enough, actually, to match up to how long LISPs have been around, or platforms have been around. 1986, we had our first platform launched, and I was 0 years old then. Don't be fooled by the gray hairs. It's all the hard work we do. And I'm sure a lot of you guys just interact with platforms or LISPs a lot on the front end, but there's a whole lot of work that goes on in the background that we never get to see. Amidst all of the talk around AI disruptions, technology advancements, there's a lot of work that goes on in the background. And sitting with me, these three gentlemen, starting with Mahesh, I'd just like, Mahesh, for you to just give us an overview of your business, as well as look at what differentiates your business to the rest of the market, and then we'll just go to an overview of the entire market, especially globally as well as locally on our side. Mahesh?
Thank you, Lucky. Just from a business perspective, I think everyone's aware of Allan Gray as a business, as an asset manager, but also as a provider of the largest platform in South Africa. In terms of what differentiates us, I think as a business, but also importantly from a platform perspective, would be what we call service alpha. And that's our ability to deliver a high quality service to advisors and their clients. And our view, in order to deliver a high quality service, you need to have robust technology sitting in the background. We prefer to own, manage and operate that technology as Allan Gray. So from a platform perspective, we've insourced, we're in control of our tech stack. And that's important because we think that allows us to deliver on that service alpha. I think importantly, it means we can also reinvest and upgrade within that platform tech stack, where we think we can get the best return for our clients and their advisors. And so it gives us more control in terms of the process of upgrading and what we bring to the market and respond to the market. I think a component to that, which is also a differentiator, means we can actually service a broader target market. So we have a public list, which is a curated, rated list of roughly 100 funds available to direct clients. And direct clients can log on, access it, and make use of those restricted lists, of that public list. But also, in terms of that public list, we find certain advisors prefer to use a curated list as opposed to a much broader list. And for those advisor practices that do want more optionality or more variability, we have a restricted list of over 800 funds, which is over 40% coverage of the market, which we think then gives advisors the ability to do a better job in servicing their clients should they wish to have that optionality. And so the differentiating factor in terms of service is underpinned by the technology, but also allows us to apply that to a much broader market.
Okay, thanks, Mahesh. Darryl?
Thanks, Lucky. So I think as a business, we've been around for cheapest. I think just before 2000, the list was initially launched, and we've never had our own distribution force, and we've never targeted the direct market either. And so, we are solely dependent on the support from independent financial advisors, and that ultimately means that all of our efforts go into delivering for their advisors so that they can ultimately get a better outcome for their investors. And that's a very broad statement, but I mean, ultimately the service we provide advisors is driven towards that outcome for the investors. And it includes things like providing a good set of technology that allows advisors to be more efficient, allows advisors to do detailed reporting for their clients, get the information to the clients when the clients need it. But it goes further than just the technology and that side of it as well. Now, what we found lately is a lot of it has to do with giving technical advice input into advisors when they meet with some sophisticated clients that have sophisticated needs. And so we've built a capability internally that has conversations with advisors to help them structure the portfolio or to help them structure the correct product for those clients. And so I think the focus for us has always been on the independent market. It's not going to change. And therefore, in order to gain their support, we need to keep investing in that side of the business and make sure, particularly I think on the technology side, I think that's going to come out a lot in the discussions today. The technology is going to become ever more important. And so, all of us on the stage, I'm sure, are going to say we're investing heavily in technology. And I think without that investment, you're not going to survive.
Thanks, Darryl. Michael.
Hi, Lucky. Thanks so much for having us here today. In a way, this is sort of several years in the making in terms of what our group set out to do, and that was invest and the opportunity to invest into a brand new investment platform technology stack from the ground up. And I guess having a tech moat is one thing, as Mahesh alluded to, but the service model that goes around that and the sort of business philosophy around adopting digital first, doing away with paper forms, and essentially fitting into the way that advisor wants to do business is what we've held sacrosanct in the design of our new platform. We launched only a couple of years ago, and it's been really interesting getting feedback from advisors, what they like, what they don't. So yeah, that's our proposition is digital first, done away with paper, and remove the rekeying of data. In terms of what sets us apart, I think we've taken the people who previously would have been keying in forms, and we've added them to add value to where advisors need them most. So whether that's transferring business from other platforms or helping them onboard and train their advisor assistants, making sure they're as effective as possible. We've repurposed our people to make sure that they're adding the most value in their interactions with advisors.
Okay, thanks, Michael. I'm seeing that platforms are becoming far much more important in our world, and really based on the fact that there's a whole lot of technology. There's the technology component, but also the functionality component really speaks to a lot of I'm sure you would agree, the advisors that are sitting in the room. I think with regards to helping them facilitate the advice process, but also be able to access a whole lot of information quicker at their fingertips. Darryl, I would like you to just talk a little bit about the key trends that you guys are seeing in the market, particularly in the South African market, and maybe you could just also spill over to the global context.
Sure. I think the SA market at the moment is incredibly interesting because there's a lot of change happening in the platform market. So let's just first start off by saying platforms are incredibly tech-hungry businesses, right? And so in order to keep abreast of the tech, you need to write a big check every year, basically. And so you need to go ask your shareholders to write this big check every year just to keep the wheels turning, but then also obviously to do enhancements, regulatory change, all of those sorts of things. And for the first time in a long time, we've seen some major platforms think about consolidation or in the process of consolidation. And so that's the first big trend that we see at the moment, right? So it's common knowledge that platforms that are currently sort of consolidating or merging. And so, whether that's because the return on the investment was not there, perhaps, and they thought they could get that return rather through scale, might be one of the reasons. But it's definitely a massive trend at the moment to watch. So that has an impact on, I think, what the second trend is, and that's all about this question about do you re-platform or don't you re-platform? I know we're going to get into it later, so I won't go down that road now. But often this consolidation or just looking at your tech stack forces you to consider the re-platforming element. So that's another trend that we're seeing at the moment, and a number of platforms are currently going through a re-platform. And then I would say the third trend that we are starting to see, and this comes more from the offshore side, is integration with advice tech firms. So in SA, it's still probably early days, but what we're seeing, particularly if we look at the US market has seen an absolute explosion of advice tech firms. And that's everything from CRM tools, reporting tools, portfolio management tools, F&A tools. And what's happened in the US, which is interesting to see, is that the platforms have stepped into the space to help advisors consolidate the technology, right? So the platform effectively becomes the central hub. All of these advice tech firms then feed into the platform. And a good example, if you want to go look at it, is go look at Schwab's website. They've got this amazing option list of hundreds of advice tech providers, and you can select the one as an advisor and say, I want to integrate with this CRM tool. And so the platform then integrates the data and the sort of the two-way traffic between the CRM and the platform. And so that's just starting off in the SA market. I think we've had these conversations, but I think it's still early days. And we think that'll be interesting to see where that goes in the next, I would say, 2 or 3 years.
Okay, awesome. Mike, any comments in particular?
Yeah, so just to maybe add to Daryl's point, in order to integrate to advice processes, it's important you do that off the back of ready and built-for-purpose technology. And so that's certainly what we've done. It's interesting in the South African market, we're a bit unique in the fact that historically we've had these large insurance companies, and then the sort of independent asset managers came along 20 years ago and started eating their lunch in terms of asset management assets. And then more recently with the rise of platforms, the onus on orchestrating the client experience and the advisor service module is placed firmly and squarely on the platform. And so that's what Daryl's comment around having to invest in this technology and service model to keep up with. And so one of those big sort of themes is regulation. We're all busy dealing with two-pot that's coming down the line, and that's a substantial investment to comply and remain compliant. And so I guess on multiple fronts, platforms are having to respond to these trends, and how we respond to them, I think, is probably a good measure of how we're doing.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. Mahesh, this one is for you. From an advice perspective, there's a view of the industry being overregulated, and seemingly the regulator not letting up with more to come. What's your view on this from your...
Yeah, so I don't think regulation in itself is necessarily bad, and in particular where it tries to rectify unethical or unprofessional behavior within the system. I think that can only be good for the industry. I think where regulation starts to rub the wrong way is when the entities that are complying with the regulation are those who are compliant, and those who aren't compliant aren't bothering with compliance. Right? So the burden of compliance sits with those who are already compliant, and less so with those who actually even care about being compliant. But I think that applies to regulation more broadly. Within our space, COFI is going to be a big change. So the Conduct for Financial Institutions, which will be an overarching piece of regulation that covers everything from short-term insurers to long-term insurers to banks to asset managers, the whole works. But I think importantly, it's a change in the way regulations applied to be much more principles and outcomes based as opposed to process based. Now, for those of you who have to deal with this, principles and outcomes are far more difficult to put in place than process, because you have to come up with the principles, and you have to wire them into your business to be able to monitor and manage and report on them. So I think that is coming front and center. I think interestingly, there's a lot that rhymes with Australia, with the EU, with the UK, and our regulator is talking to those regulators. So we will see what transpires in those markets. We will get versions of those that will come through into South Africa, and often without much consideration as to whether or not it's appropriate given our state of play in South Africa and the market in which we operate in. So I think regulations is only going to get worse, and that's one of the costs that we bear as platforms in order to comply. That being said, this is just one piece of a whole host of regulation that's hitting us as business South Africa. So whether it's grey listing or anti-money laundering, whether it's national health insurance or social security reform, which is a big one that not a lot of people are talking about, whether it's the Employment Equity Amendment Act. There's a lot of regulation that's either in play or we can see just out there that actually is going to make the cost of doing business and operating in South Africa, cost of doing business higher and operating less efficient. And just to the previous question around the trends, if you look at the pricing on platforms, it's been going one way. But if you look at regulation, if you look at technology, if you look at requirements, it's going the other way. And those jaws can't keep going that way. Something has to give at some point in time. So somewhere out there is I don't know what it is, but some sort of step change, because as it's going at the moment, it's becoming increasingly difficult to keep pace with the requirements that clients and advisors want, the cost of building that tech, and the regulatory compliance that comes alongside it.
Okay, awesome.
Maybe
Thanks.
just to jump in there, Mahesh. So something which advisors tell me often is they battle making sense of their clients' data that's sitting all over the place. And so I think one thing which might make us as an industry famous is the responsible handling and securing of data, but also the clever way we can expose that to clients when they need to make sense of it in front of their advisor. I think that problem is a really difficult nut to crack, but certainly one I think worth investigating.
Yeah. And then the one I missed was Papier on top of that, to what you were saying.
So, Daryl, with your oversight on consumer and advisor behavior, has regulation benefited the end client on the measure of performance and advice given? And Mike, I'd like you to also comment on that one, just after Daryl.
On a measure of performance and advice given, I think, look, I mean, in principle, we have no issue with regulation that leads to good client outcomes. I think Mahesh has already said that there's just this raft of regulation that keeps coming, and it's sometimes difficult to understand sort of the cost-benefit relationship. So if I had to think about, does it lead to better performance regulation, I would say that link is probably a bit tenuous. I think the advisor has a far greater role in determining the performance that a client ultimately receives and the outcome that the client receives. You might make an argument to say something like better cost disclosure maybe leads to the advisor choosing the right investments for the client, or something like the EAC helped show the impact of charges on future investment returns. Although that wasn't really regulation, that was actually driven by a CISA. And so there's a I would say there's a bit of a weak argument there between the regulation and actual client end performance. I would say unlikely to have a meaningful impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike?
I think in our engagements with the regulators, certainly around our digital client onboarding process, there was broad recognition that many of our regulations that are currently in place are fairly old and haven't kept pace with the times, particularly with the move to digital and all the tools that we have today. But in its essence, I think we have some great regulations in South Africa. So particularly, I mean, around the governance of compliance with fund mandates and the oversight that your compliance team should be doing, I think all of that adds to long-term client performance, because asset managers should deliver what they say on the tin, and compliance sort of goes hand in hand with that.
Okay, awesome. And then Mike, for you, you have open architecture, with this being a fairly new platform and being built at a stage where there's a lot of more industry insight. What has guided your approach to delivering to advisors' needs?
There's definitely a proliferation of unit trusts in the market. So to offer a completely open platform is firstly quite difficult in terms of volumes. So I think it's worth offering a sensible open platform, which both Mahesh and Daryl were sort of alluding to in their propositions. Ultimately, most advisors want to work with, whether it's their DFM provider or a fund manager that they perhaps create a white label for them and their clients, and we can host those, and I think that's a key to enabling an advisor's proposition. I think something which is an interesting trend is the proliferation of additional fund classes in the industry, and how that's bringing pressure to bear on the asset manager. And DFMs like INN8 are also part of that trend.
Awesome.
Maybe I can just jump in there on the open architecture question. So we have 1,500 funds on our platform. We have 80% of the assets sit in 12% of the funds. So it's a massive concentration, So I think this option of choice is a bit of an illusion. I think people want choice, but they rarely use it, And so there's massive concentration in funds, but there's also massive concentration in managers as well on the platform. And so you can I guess the platform is at the receiving end of the requests from advisors and DFMs to say, I really want to use this fund. I promise you I'm going to put 20 million rand into it. A year later, there's maybe 200,000 rand. But you're then stuck with a tail of funds that you can't close down because there's capital gains tax events. And those all add to the cost of running a platform. We'd love to run a platform with 100 funds on it because there's less reconciliations, although most of that is automated nowadays, less things that go wrong, less ballots that have to be sent out on behalf of the asset managers. So those all add to the cost of the platform. So I think open architecture, it sounds nice. You can have everything that you want, but in reality, it's very rarely used.
Okay, thank you for those comments. And then just on the DFMs, a challenge DFMs face currently in terms of model execution is fund availability and fee class availability on the different platforms, often having to steer away from the best investment view. Based on this, what are your views on how DFMs or CAT2s should approach this, considering based on the limitations being limitations being a platform-led one? That would go to you, Mike, and then Mahesh, your comment.
I might have jumped the gun a bit with the multiple classes, but the question really is one around access. So as a platform, how do you ring fence access to specific classes of funds so that this audience of advisors and or DFM can use it, and also all of your reconciliations tie up? And, by the way, you can go back to the fund manager and hand on heart say, I've only given access to the people that you have told me may have access to these fund classes. So that's quite a tricky process to orchestrate. We've managed to do that, but it's not for everyone. And I think you have to understand your advisor audience and how they want to work. And so the trend of DFMs sort of gathering up assets under management within their model portfolios and the classes that they want access to, we've had to respond in terms of that. So, we've got well over 600 fund classes on the platform, and many of those funds have sort of 2 or 3 classes each.
Okay. Moving on quickly.
Sorry, can I just chip in there as well? Maybe just on the your question was what can DFMs and asset managers do? The first thing I'd say is that they should include the platforms in those discussions. Because all too often what happens is there's a negotiation between the DFM and the asset manager with an expectation that the platform will implement. Now, we've spoken about the cost of additional classes, additional funds that don't get used, and this is an additional cost to the platform that the platform has to bear. And to Mike's point, it's incredibly complicated to administer these things. People change their advisors, they maybe switch out of the model portfolio that the DFM was managing. Somebody has to go and then get that client out of that class. And that sounds easy, but it's actually quite difficult because you're running with thousands of transactions on a particular day. And somebody has to then go and do some sort of manual overlay to try and get the clients to switch into the correct class. So we fully get that. Yes, there is some benefit to the asset manager for having a direct relationship with the DFM, and perhaps they are entitled to a preferential fee class based on the allocation of assets. But one must remember that the person or the entity actually handling the complexity and the cost at the end of the day is the platform. And therefore, I think the conversation needs to be between all three parties before we get this absolute proliferation of fee classes in the industry.
Okay, thank you so much. And then, Mike, this is to you, but then also I'd like Mahesh to just also comment. A topic INN8 has been championing for some time is the one of re-platforming. You're one of the brave few that embarked on this journey fairly soon. Maybe tell us a bit about this journey and the key considerations to take before you take the leap.
So re-platforming can mean a number of different things. In our context, it was effectively building something to replace a legacy technology platform. And so we've invested in this new tech stack. You don't just sort of turn a button on, and there are a number of different ways to solve the problem. You can build something yourself, you can have a hybrid model, or you can outsource administration. And we've chosen to do sort of something in the middle, which is buy something off the shelf and then customize it for the South African market. And what I've noticed with certain external entrants to this market is international people underestimate the sophistication and the level of changes that need to be affected into their systems so you can host a retail wealth proposition in South Africa. And so it's not an easy job, but certainly I'll be the first one to put up my hand. But I guess we're substantially through 99% of that, and we've got a live proposition in the market. So I guess we're looking around at our competitors who sit on existing, very stable stacks, but at some point, whether it's in the front end or the client registry and trading at the back end, they may have to make some decisions.
Mahesh, your views?
Yeah, so to Mike's point, it's essentially your operating model, right? When you talk about re-platforming, the operating model of your platform, and we insource, we run our own tech stack, and I've alluded to the reasons in terms of being able to control that service outcome being important for us. But that being said, it's not like we are sitting on a static system, right? Your tech stack has different layers, and you're continuously assessing those layers and looking at what either needs to be reinvested in or what needs to be upgraded. And so it in itself, even though you have a single operating model, you are continuously upgrading and investing in that in that stack in terms of making it fit for purpose. So it's from our perspective. As Mike said, you're either doing it because you have a legacy system and it's not able to fulfill what you require, or you're bringing a whole lot of different platforms together and you want a single platform to be able to execute efficiently, or you think outsourcing is more efficient and someone can do it better than you can. We think our platform is fit for purpose at this point in time. It may be a decision we need to make at some future point in time, but it's also not a decision we're afraid to make. On our institutional side, we're going through a change in operating model, outsourcing some of our back office and middle office functions, and likewise in terms of our new offshore platform, it's an outsourced service provider that's providing our back end. So it's something you continuously assess. Is it able to meet your current needs, your foreseeable needs, and potentially your future needs? And when those questions start to change, that's when you need to think about your operating model. So we don't think we're there yet.
Okay. Thank you. We've got just under a minute to go. And I think this question is important in that it says, I would think brand plays a role in the South African consumer market. And what's your view on that, looking at what you've experienced? And final closing comment would be then, how do you see the industry, the platform industry in South Africa play out in the next 5 years?
Where do you want to...
Any one of you. Mike's eager.
It depends what perspective you take. So I think in the client's eyes, this is mostly a room full of financial advisors, it's way easier to sell a big brand name in their portfolio. Clients don't ask questions, and it's sort of, everyone, no one gets fired for buying IBM. So from an investment management perspective, I think brand plays a big deal. From an INN8 perspective, where we said we want to build out this platform brand, we want to build out a specialist DFM and this retail wealth business, I think the audience is much smaller. And so being able to reach out and build relationships with financial advisors over the last 5 years has been challenging and interesting and really engaging and whatever you. But I think it's going to be interesting how things play out over the next, say, 5-10 years to see as organizations specialize, okay, these guys do platform, these guys do asset management, how do those brands evolve in the retail wealth market?
Thanks, Mike. Mahesh, closing?
I think brand's incredibly important. We're in the business of trust, and so we have to work very hard every day to maintain that trust and confidence of our clients, and you can lose it in an instant. To the extent that you can carry that brand and you have the credibility around that brand, I think makes a meaningful difference. Although on this stage, I think we're the only brand that doesn't have a number in our names. So we need to look at that.
Yeah. I think the gents have
Maybe
said
it's time for a rebrand.
A rebrand is very difficult to ask us. Obviously brand's important. I think, we felt that when we went through the 91 rebrand almost 3 years ago now. And it's incredibly important that clients have confidence in the brand where they're placing their clients' investments, their investors' investments. I think you can get past the brand thing with relationships. And I think that was what the 91 rebrand taught us, is that we had such strong relationships with the advisors that supported our business and that it helped build our business, that we were able to get through that transitional period, even though there was a hell of a lot of angst at that time. But I think, so brand is important, but I think relationships are equally important.
Awesome, thank you. In Zulu we say, isikhathi sliwe inja. Direct translation is the dog ate the time. I don't know if it makes sense in English. But yeah, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience as well.
INN8 is a registered trademark of Stanlib Wealth Management Pty Limited, an authorized financial services provider.